Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz pianist and composer Andy Milne. We caught up with him in late April 2020 to talk about his latest 2020 CD with Unison called The Remission, coming out during the pandemic. For more than 25 years, this Juno Award-winning musician has been quite active in the world of jazz. He opened up about his new material, this pandemic, the world we live in, and the future. Enjoy.
Hey, I'm good, man. How you holding up?
I'm fine, thank you, yeah.
I guess the one reason why I wanted to reach out, I know you have new material coming out, but I kind of wanted to reach out to artists to talk about this COVID-19 jazz world, which is quite shocking and surreal, and just to kind of, just talk about the music for a little bit. So thanks for taking a minute out. I guess my twofold question here about your album, Unison, The Remission, is, it's got to be bittersweet. On the one hand, you're releasing music during a time where people really need art, but you're also releasing it during a time where you can't actually physically be out and promote it. Talk to me about kind of your feelings on releasing material during a global pandemic.
Yeah, it's a bit of a kind of a period of mourning in a way. I mean, I feel maybe to a degree to a large degree, I feel pretty fortunate. So it's hard to sort of want to voice, real frustration because I know a lot of people are really, clamoring to kind of hold on to kind of, shelter and existence and whatnot. So I feel like my problems they're just sort of particular, frustrations, in terms of like losing an opportunity. But, I understand that people appreciate music and they appreciate and need music. And so, the record was obviously, way in the pipeline long before we knew we were going to be shutting down the economy. So it was kind of, I actually reached out to the label in March and just said, "Is we still going to go forward with this?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's sort of like every once you hit enter, everything is kind of like moving." And so I just had to kind of accept that, and I was fortunate that I had enough resources to do a significant publicity campaign, both in print and media, in radio, to try to at least tell people who are able to receive music and new music that this record's coming out. And I was on the fence about what the tour could still happen because I had a tour planned for next month, but it's not at this point, and that's really frustrating because there's so much value in people experiencing music in person, and maybe the kind of, I think, the life cycle of hearing something in person and then saying, "Oh, I want that recording," and hear how it maybe originated, and hear it again and share it with people. And I think that's a typical sort of modification to the way in which there's sort of a life cycle of developing music on the road, perhaps, and then recording it, and then taking it out on the road and maybe adding some music to it, and sort of moving through the stages of how a band develops repertoire and how a band develops just as an ensemble. And so those things are kind of taken out of the mix, but it's weird. It's just a bittersweet feeling because I don't feel like, there's so many people that have either lost their life or been sick or don't know how they're going to be able to pay their rent, and so it's hard to kind of express my frustration because I don't feel like it's nearly as grave as it is for a lot of people.
Obviously, during this time, I think it's been very clear that the arts are going to save humanity. The real practitioners obviously are in hospitals and food and hospitality people. There's all kinds of people that are really chipping in. But at the end of the day, the artists really are going to save us. TV, film, visual arts, and music. It's going to keep our spirits up. So during this time of no jazz, this very surreal time that we've never experienced on this planet before, what can people that listen to this, what can people that love jazz do to keep you artists afloat until we return to a live environment?
Well, there's a lot of, I know there was a series of benefit concerts that took place, in-home concerts that were sort of to benefit specifically musicians in New York. That happened in early April. I think pretty much any artist that's really feeling a serious squeeze, they're doing concerts in their home and asking for donations. And I think anybody who's in a position to engage with those artists. I mean, I guess the assumption is that you already know them and follow them to some degree, that you can sort of seek out their sort of new online activity and support them as best you can, because I mean they're doing it for two reasons. They're doing it because I shouldn't say we. I mean I'm sort of I suffered a lot of losses. I just am in a position where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take the time to sort of figure out how to do this. I didn't want to sort of feel as though I should jump into the fray as far as and then sort of initial surge of performances, partly because I wasn't sure if my tour could still happen or not when the quarantine kind of first kicked in. But I think music lovers, who people are able to support by buying artist recordings, existing recordings, and certainly by supporting their streaming efforts, because I think those things are much more direct to artists. I mean, they're not filtered through a significant distribution hub that takes a sizable chunk. I mean, honestly, I think people need to, if they can, buy the music, even if it's. I think downloads are far more supportive of artists than streaming. I know streaming is convenient and cost efficient, but it's artists just they more than ever really need something. I mean, Spotify made some announcement about setting aside some sort of fund of money that they were going to give to artists, and it's kind of a slap in the face, because their royalty is such an insult to begin with, that if they have this money, they should have been their business model should more effectively reflect the people that their profits are on the backs of, and so it's kind of a disingenuous offer in a lot of ways, because they clearly have the money they should have been sharing from day one. But I think it from individual people, listeners, I think it's critical that they let musicians and artists know that they're not just musicians, but like dance companies or dancers and theaters. I mean, actors. I mean, everybody's sort of hit in the performing arts world, and I think our world is based on gathering in a lot of ways, and so that's just been completely severed. So I think performing arts across the spectrum is something that people, if they can engage and support with these different streaming live home concert type things, or just the existing work that artists have out there, they should definitely do so. It's a long answer, but
no, I like it. That's what I'm looking for. And I do have one more question, very COVID-19 related. We're going to get back to live music, and I know there's a lot of ambiguity about when that's going to happen, but it will happen. And my question to you is this. We've had a lot of time to reflect. We've been in this for almost 40-plus days, and we don't know how much longer we have, but it's going to be a while. What do you hope both the musician and audience member realizes? What revelations do you hope they get during this time away, so when we return, there's silver linings and we're wiser and stronger?
Well, I hope that humanity, and that's a big hope, because I think there's a whole swath of people that are, despite this experience, are still pretty self-absorbed. So I don't know if it's enough of a jolt. I think people have to literally be choking and clinging to their last breath to wake up and go, oh, I have to change. And I don't know that everybody's on that page, because as universal as this pandemic is in terms of how it's affecting, how it's requiring some sort of modification to people's movements, it's affecting people disproportionately, right, across geography and certainly across economic lines. So the reaction that I'm not quite as positive about how are we as a civilization going to have a tenfold change in our priorities and our value system. And I think we've, long before this pandemic, especially in this country, in the United States, we don't value the arts. We don't value the arts at all. And so if we're really being honest here, I can't be Pollyannish about that, because we don't value the arts in this society. And so if we're going to change, and see that future that you're describing about the arts saving us, we have to be able to recognize their value, and not sort of minimalize and treat it as though it's other and of no value, and of no value to the development of the mind and the development of community. and development of healing. I mean, it's like these are fundamentally true things, but we don't value them. And so I don't know what the wake-up call is going to be. It would be lovely if this was somehow just this kind of cataclysmic awakening where we thought, oh my God, the artists are really speaking the truth, or they're really speaking the healing truth, and we all need this, and we have to appreciate this, and we have to listen up, and we have to pay attention, we have to regard this and honor it. I would love that to be the outcome, but we were never a society that really holistically went 360 degrees. Of course, we have pockets everywhere where people support the arts, but as an overarching national priority, it's so far down the list. It's like sports is the art in this country. And so I'm not willing to sort of say, oh yeah, it's so Pollyanna, because that's not how America ticks. America doesn't tick on the arts, and that's a negative, I know what to say, but it's just the truth. It's like very hard to, be in the trenches and have to wake up every day and fight against that prevailing tide, and that's what the prevailing tide has been for a long time. And so artists are, troopers to kind of get up there and fight this fight, and we support each other, and we certainly have the support of many, many, many people. I don't mean to say that the entire country doesn't give a damn about the arts, but it's a hard slog. So in order to push, I guess, to the light of what the arts give us in terms of that strength and that sort of sense of healing, and certainly that sense of community, we have to be able to respect the arts. And I don't know how quite we bring that message to the foreground, because we're at a turning point. And I think I've witnessed a lot of different endeavors of my colleagues across the country doing what they can to sort of express what they want to express about either this time, or just to express, and to kind of offer something, usually quite selflessly, not expecting compensation, but just to share it. And I think it's a beautiful kind of tribute to the artistic spirit that exists in so many, art makers, And I just hope that people can maybe begin to see past themselves and understand that there's art in so many things. There's art in the way someone makes a meal for someone. There's art in the way you can help someone, load their groceries into their car. There's art in the way you can build a cabinet, and there's art in the way you can make music. And so these things have universality to them, and I think if we can start to appreciate the artfulness in things, maybe that's an opening. I'm sort of answering this as I go along, because I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking, maybe appreciating the artfulness in many things perhaps is a gateway drug, if you will, into a rebirth of appreciation for art that would be a positive for the growth, or of allowing art into our lives in a more honest way, rather than this sort of subversive way which occurs every day, but people don't realize that they're staring at art or hearing art. It's there, but we don't always recognize it. Kind of like, if I get deep on it, it's kind of like we don't realize we live in a socialist society. We talk about it not being that, but it's nobody drives on a road that wasn't funded by public money, basically. So it's a realization of what's here.
No, and thank you for going on improv and answering it that way. That's why I'm doing this. I think this is a really good outlet. This is a really good time to document and capture some very raw emotions from what I consider very raw artists. I mean, you already mimic a way of doing music, and if there's any artists out there that are really well equipped for this, it's probably jazz artists, because this is what you do on stage all the time. You're thrown into a situation, and you have to make it the best you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that jazz musicians, for the most part, at its core, even though they can be kind of insular, they definitely possess the ability to sustain multiple conversations simultaneously, and in this very responsive environment that is, very challenging, and I think that there's been enough scientific study to demonstrate how the brain activity in a jazz musician is pretty sophisticated. So that's not to pat ourselves on the back. It's just to sort of say, well, there's there's a model here. I mean, I'm assuming that enough of the activity returns to normal. I'm going to be doing a presentation for for a whole bunch of urologists in September, talking about like improvisation in jazz and how that can maybe inform the process in the surgical environment.
Right on.
So there's a lot of pockets of appreciation here, and it's just a matter of where they all can align and help humanity in some significant way. And of course, to an economic system that doesn't really benefit the sort of long-term goals of humanity, which is to survive.
Yeah.
It's a fallacy. We call it a capitalist system, but it's only a few people that are capitalists. They're the ones that own everything. Everybody else is just paying rent. They're just consumers, and so we propagate this false message, and everybody's so bought into the hype, and it's very difficult to convince people otherwise. And now we're so polarized that it's like, forget it. So I've always thought for years, I think it was a stupid movie, like Independence Day with Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum, but I love the idea that somehow the world would come together because of an external force. And I've often thought that, like, what's it going to take? It's going to take some sort of force from outside to get us to wake up and go, oh, let's get together. We're all sort of on the same team here. Yep. We're still not even there, and this is pretty damn serious.
Yeah, you're right.
But we're still not able to be there,
You're totally right.
We can all choose to be our own sense of healing if we want to provide our own music internally in our own homes, or we can sing to our children, or we can quote unquote consume the music of others. I think it's important to try to see how pieces of the economy that are not able to sort of that are sort of so service related. I mean, like, think of all the massage therapists and wedding photographers that can't make a living either, right? So there's plenty of people that are hemorrhaging as a result of the way we're having to approach this, but. Somebody's going to get excluded. I don't know that you could just, it would have been a hell of a lot easier if the government just gave everybody a check for $1,200 every month and call it a day.
Yeah, right. Hey, man, Andy, thank you for taking a little time to talk about the world, music, and everything in between. I really appreciate it. It's been illuminating.
Oh, good.
Stay safe, man.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Michigan, Missouri, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Andy for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.